Tonight, we are live in Israel as history is made here and across the region. The last of the living Israeli hostages finally free, as President Trump declares a historic dawn of a new Middle East. The emotional homecomings after more than 2 years in captivity. Hostages racing to their parents, siblings jumping into the arms of their family, fathers clinging to their sons. We were there as crowds erupted in cheers, helicopters carrying the freed hostages flying overhead. President Trump on the ground here in Israel, the hero's welcome he received, his triumphant speech to Israel's parliament, why he says this will be a lasting peace. Plus, with thousands of Palestinian prisoners and detainees freed, questions are growing about how Gaza will rebuild and what will become of Hamas. Also tonight, the powerful nor'easter slamming the East Coast, communities underwater as tropical storm force winds and storm surge batter the region, a ground stop at one of the busiest airports in the U.S., and the urgent search for the missing in Alaska as remnants of a typhoon sweeps away homes. The terrifying scene on a Massachusetts highway, a small plane crashing during the height of rush hour. The new warning from the Speaker of the House why this could be the longest government shutdown ever. And the moments of pure joy after more than 2 years of agony for hostage families. The nightmare is finally over. And tonight, the survivors proving that hope endures even in the darkest of places. Plus, the possible game changer for the war in Ukraine. Will President Trump hand over those Tomahawk missiles to Ukrainian President Zelensky? Top story starts right now.
Special edition of Top Story with Tom Llamas, reporting tonight from Israel.
Hey, good evening. We are live tonight from Tel Aviv as we mark a historic day here in the Middle East after 738 days of a living nightmare inside of Gaza. The final 20 living hostages from the October 7th attack are finally free. The journey home began this morning, crowds cheering as those hostages made their way back into Israel. You see that here. We were there in what has become known as Hostage Square, the crowd erupting as military helicopters carrying some of those hostages flew overhead and on the ground, the emotional moments 2 years in the making. Those hostages, after years in captivity, now embraced by their loved ones, overcome with emotion and relief. The deal today also saw nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees released by Israel. Cameras capturing this moment, a child, look at this, lifted up to this man in a bus window, embracing him as he returns to Gaza. It was a day of triumph for President Trump, hailed a hero as he touched down in Israel. Trump speaking before the Israeli parliament, the Knesset predicting the start of a golden age for the region.
This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Trump then traveling to Egypt, gathering with regional partners and leaders from around the globe, signing that historic peace agreement that he helped broker as the ceasefire in Gaza still holds. But where a war once was, a wasteland remains. A UN agency estimates 80% of the structures in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. Look at these images. And authorities there say more than 67,000 people have been killed. 67,000. Questions remain about who will run Gaza and what role Hamas will play. The path to a lasting peace only gets harder from here. But for those who have waited in agony for today's return, this is the end of a painful chapter and a day of hope. And that is where we begin tonight here in Tel Aviv, those final 20 living hostages finally free at last.
Tonight, the miraculous homecoming. Jubilation as vans carry freed Israeli hostages back into Israel. And the moment, the massive crowd that packed Hostage Square all night erupts in cheers.
An incredible moment right now here at Hostage Square. Everyone's looking to the skies because a military helicopter carrying some of the hostages flying over Tel Aviv right now.
All day, the emotions pouring out after 738 days, many in underground Hamas tunnels. 20 Israelis are finally back home. 2 years ago, the world watched in horror at these images. Hamas terrorists abducting Noah Argamani onto a motorcycle as her boyfriend is also dragged away. Noah was rescued last year. And tonight, they are finally together again. 25-year-old Eitan Moore was taken from the Nova Music Festival as well. That's his father, overcome during their reunion. And here's the emotional moment. Segev Kalfan reunites with his family. Segev was also abducted from the music festival. His family only learning a few months ago he was still alive. And this is Avi Ohana in a hallway, preparing for the time many thought would never come. His son Yosef, who helped others escape the Hamas terror attacks, but was then kidnapped himself. Tonight, his powerful embrace with his dad. And watch as those van doors open up to reveal Avitar David, greeting a cheering crowd. 2 months ago, Hamas terrorists released a video of Avitar digging his own grave. But tonight, he's back in Israel and back with his family. And we're also seeing the first images of Omri Moran, reunited with his wife and daughters. I spoke to his brother-in-law yesterday.
What do you hope to tell him?
I hope to tell him what an incredible wife he has, what brave little daughters he has. The entire world knows his name in one way or another and wanted to see him home.
And that's Keith Siegel, FaceTiming tonight with freed hostage Matan Angrest. I love you so much, Keith tells him, and no one knows better what Matan is going through.
We were held together for 2.5 months, locked up in a very small, dark room, just the two of us.
Keith was held captive with Matan before he was released last February.
Does it stay with you? I mean, do you have nightmares? What is life like afterwards?
Life is a lot of things afterwards. My family suffered for 484 days, not knowing if I was alive, not knowing what's happening with me.
All of these reunions a result of President Trump's peace deal, a remarkable diplomatic achievement.
The hostages are back. It is a good feeling. Isn't that nice to say?
Speaking to the Israeli parliament today, President Trump saying this deal is just the beginning.
Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change. It will be the golden age of Israel and the golden age of the Middle East.
As part of that agreement, nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, some convicted of murder and terror offenses, but others detained without charges during the war, were also released today. The president appealing to Palestinians.
This is their chance to turn forever from the path of terror and violence. I think that's going to happen.
Still, this is a bittersweet moment for many families here in Israel. Tonight, just hoping to get their loved ones' remains. American Hirsch Goldberg Poland was one of the hostages murdered by Hamas. We spoke to his parents.
We've got some painful days ahead as we uncover the fact that some number of them may not even be found.
And President Trump was still in the air on his way to the region this morning as some of those hostages were released. He touched down today in Israel as a hero to many of its people, addressing the Israeli parliament before signing a peace agreement in Egypt. Peter Alexander has more on the president's whirlwind tour.
From the moment he landed in Israel, the words "thank you" visible from Air Force One and billboards here expressing gratitude. President Trump basked in the praise of a country that credits him more than its own prime minister for today's long-awaited reunions. The president's name echoing through Israel's parliament as he touted his landmark diplomatic success.
This is the end of an age of terror and death. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Netanyahu praising his American ally.
Donald Trump is the greatest friend that the state of Israel has ever had in the White House.
Going off script, the president called on his Israeli counterpart to pardon Netanyahu, who was indicted for allegedly accepting expensive gifts, which he denies.
Cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
The president then heading to Egypt for a peace signing ceremony with Arab nations and other world leaders who back the deal.
Peace has been achieved after untiring efforts led by President Trump.
With so many potential challenges still ahead, like disarming Hamas and rebuilding Gaza that the president largely glossed over today, while declaring the war is over.
This took 3,000 years to get to this point. Can you believe it? And it's going to hold up, too. It's going to hold up.
Peter Alexander joins us now live from Tel Aviv. Peter, this is only one step of the peace process, right? Those other phases are pretty complicated. Where do the negotiations stand on those phases?
Well, it's a good question. There are a lot of negotiations that still have to happen. The president obviously very focused on this first phase right now, the success diplomatically of returning these 20 living hostages home. Obviously, there was a trade where detainees and prisoners returned to their families throughout the West Bank or here in Gaza. But certainly the issues that were to be discussed during this meeting that took place late today in Egypt, the disarmament of Hamas, as we discussed, the future political structure that will exist there. Beyond that, who's going to pay for the reconstruction that takes place? This was the desire in bringing these countries together. And finally, that peacekeeping or security force, we should say, who's going to give their men to help man the ground there. We should note that the president is viewing this as sort of a starting point here, right? He is looking to build on the momentum from this to try to go beyond it, to help Abraham Accords with the normalizing of relations between Israel and other Arab countries. And he's also notably proposing a possible peace deal with Iran that only a few months ago was being bombed by Israel and by the United States. The president late today, Tom, said that this deal will hold up, but I think it's fair to say that time is going to test that.
Incredibly optimistic. We'll see what happens. All right, Peter Alexander, we thank you for that. I now want to bring in Sharon Haskell. She's Israel's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Minister Haskell, we thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. I want to start with the emotional reunions we've been seeing all day. Tell me what these moments mean to someone like you and to the people of Israel.
Wow, it's very difficult to explain. Since the 7th of October, the biggest trauma we've actually experienced here in Israel, we didn't even had a chance to start a recovering process from that. We've been so busy on an existential war against 6 armies of Iran attacking us on a daily basis that we couldn't breathe. We couldn't take that first step of recovery from it. Seeing them coming back to the loving arms of their family, I cannot explain to you how excited and how happy we are. This is a moment where our entire nation can start breathing again and can start a recovering process, a healing process from that terrible day.
Minister, in what situations, if any, would Israel feel it necessary to break this fragile peace?
Look, obviously, it's not just Israel that agreed on that. It's the entire international community, including Arab countries who accepted Qatar and Jordan and Egypt and Turkey, that Hamas cannot play a future role in the Palestinian future, not from a civilian point of view and not from a military point of view. Understanding that this death cult, a terrorist organization that does not seek peace and stability, that does not seek coexistence, cannot be part of that. It's important that we don't end in another 5-10 years in another round of war. And that is a major, major point. I do think that having Turkey and Qatar with enough leverage on Hamas as their leadership is being hosted in luxurious hotels with very fat bank account in Qatar, in Turkey, there's enough leverage for them to pressure Hamas's leadership to actually accept the second stage of the plan.
Minister Haskell, you were there in the Knesset when President Trump was addressing your legislative body and the country of Israel and really the world. You've been very vocal of your appreciation. What was that moment like today?
Wow. You know, we never had such a good friend in the White House, and definitely President Trump is one of Israel's best friends. I think that it was an extremely exciting moment for us, especially when he was talking in depth about the problems in the Middle East, addressing our concerns. The right of Israel to exist, the existential threat from Iran, from a nuclear bomb, and now that threats the entire world. Those are important things that resonates among us Israelis as we pay the prices of living in such a tough neighborhood. This was a very important and historical moment. There's very few historical moments like that. And as Jews who remember their history and cherish their history, we thank Trump on that day. But it's also important for me to thank the American people. It's an opportunity for me to thank for the love, the support, and the prayers of the American nation. You know, there is such a strong bond and friendship, not just between President Trump and Netanyahu, but it's the people to people between Israel and the American people, the shared values as President Trump described it so wonderfully. And it was an extremely exciting moment because it was also a chance for us to thank him for standing strong, for being, with a tough policy that brought results for our neighborhood.
What do you think Israel's role is in Gaza after today? Does Israel pull out completely? Does Israel stay there in some capacity? Does Israel help Palestinians rebuild Gaza?
Look, it's a good question. And if we look on the last 20 years, we've made immense efforts in helping to reconstruct their economy, in bringing workers here to Israel, training them, you know, taking children to be treated in Israeli hospitals. The distrust that the 7th of October has created is going to create many difficulties, and it's particularly sit on a sensitive point, which is trust and the huge disappointment and the suffering that we had in the last 2 years because of that. I think this is a time for the international community to rise up and take charge. I think Tony Blair is a good option. I think that the 20 point that President Trump laid out that speaks about the education, about the economy, about the security, having a serious international force that will keep the security of Israelis and Palestinians is so important as well. Look on what's happening now in Gaza. The last 2-3 days where Israel withdrew from a lot of these territories, where Hamas was able to go back into those neighborhoods, they're shooting, killing, abducting, eating Palestinians. There's been dozens, if not hundreds, of people who were murdered until now, and not a word almost in the media about it. So it's not just about the security of Israel. It's also about the security and safety of Palestinians, liberating them from this vile terrorist death cult.
Minister Haskell, we thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
On this momentous day, there's still so much uncertainty about what happens next inside of Gaza. Palestinians returning to their homes, or what's left of them. You see these images here, often finding rubble where their houses once stood. More than 67,000 lives have been lost in this brutal war, and amid the destruction, one question rings loud and clear: what comes next? To try and help answer the questions, our Richard Engel joins us tonight live here in Tel Aviv. Richard, one of the major pillars of Trump's peace plan is that Hamas will essentially surrender. They will no longer rule Gaza. They will have to put down their arms. We don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, a Hamas spokesman today said that it's not going to happen. He said that the group will hand over its weapons eventually to a Palestinian state, and he envisioned that Hamas would then become part of a future Palestinian army. that doesn't seem imminent. And if you look at some of the images that we saw today, when these prisoners were handed over, there were people who were arrested during the course of this war. They were sent back to Gaza. Some of them were arrested for no reason, just for being there. Look at the image. Who was surrounding them to greet them? These were police, but Hamas police keeping guard. And you could see there were lots of gunmen still out there. So Hamas still exists.
Even firing into the air.
Firing into the air. It seems like crowd control, not a little celebratory fire. You can see right now the display of force. Also, there are Israeli troops still inside Gaza. So that means the possibility that the two sides clash at some stage is quite, I would say, likely.
Yeah, when you look at the images, the devastation, and I asked the minister that was pressing her, will Israel play some type of role in rebuilding Gaza? Gaza needs a lot right now. Besides the aid, besides just feeding the people, after that, they're going to need construction vehicles. They're going to need a plan. There's a lot to be done there.
And it's not just the physical rebuilding. In a certain sense, that's the easier part. It's all the lives that have been lost. 67,000 people plus, right, according to local medical officials. That's out of a population of 2 million in an area that is only 25 miles long. All of Gaza is an eighth of the size of Rhode Island. This much destruction, that much death, it leads to anger, it leads to rage, and that is explosive. And it will explode unless it is dealt with. And just putting in some new buildings doesn't make that go away.
Yeah, and your larger point is that this first phase has been hammered out. It looks to be successful, but it's going to be unclear what happens with phase 2 and phase 3.
Very unclear what's going to happen to who's going to govern Gaza. We've talked about that. What happens to Hamas. What happens still in the short term as Israeli troops pull back.
And does Israel eventually pull out completely?
Well,
or do they maintain a presence? Right?
I think if there are clashes, and I think it's quite likely at some stage there's going to be clashes, there's going to be flare-ups, then Israel will say, well, we can't pull out, and Hamas will say, well, we're going to keep fighting as long as there are Israeli troops in there. So you could have cycles of violence.
Richard Engel for us tonight. Richard, so great to have you here, part of our team. I want to head over to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt right now, where President Trump and leaders from around the world participated in that peace signing ceremony you saw earlier. Our Keir Simmons is there tonight. Keir, great to have you as well. So many leaders traveled to Egypt for this moment. How optimistic did it feel like, did it sound like the rest of the world is that this truce brokered by President Trump will hold?
Well, I think there was real optimism here, Tom, and also a real sense of relief. Like in so many places, many of the neighbors of Israel, Arab states, have felt that their much needed security, stability was being shaken by what was happening in Gaza. There was also, of course, a profound sense of understanding for the Palestinian people amongst many of the leaders of the countries that surround Israel. So there was all of that. And then I think there was also this sense of the power of the American presidency and the way President Trump utilizes it to get things done. An extraordinary moment, Tom. The Chancellor of Germany, waiting for hours for President Trump to arrive, walked over and stood and watched President Trump speaking in the Knesset on NBC News monitors on our live feed. That was something I'd never experienced before. And then after the meeting with the signing of the peace plan, as it's called by the Trump administration, then the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, came out, and I asked her about just that question about how sustainable this idea of this peace plan really is, how likely it is in practice to work out, if you like. And she was effusive in her support for President Trump.
Do you believe that President Trump will manage to turn this into an actual peace for the Middle East?
I'm absolutely optimistic on this, but in any case, we're ready to provide all the help that is needed. I think the international community has to help him the maximum we can. So Italy is here to say we are ready.
There are multiple layers here, Tom, of course. Those European leaders who are here want President Trump's support in their battle with Russia over the Ukraine war. So different interests, but also real optimism and hope that this terrible scene in Gaza could be solved.
Yeah, and we know a lot of leaders there want a Palestinian state, but Israel does not. President Trump has not really committed to that two-state solution. Yet they're backing Trump. So what do we draw from all that, Keir? That's somewhat confusing.
Yeah, it is. And I think, honestly, that some of this is to do with the personal connections that President Trump has with leaders, particularly in the Gulf, like the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. I think there is that at play. There are economic interests, clearly. But there are also questions about what happened. Prime Minister Netanyahu was not here today. There was a possibility that he would be here, and then the announcement from his office that he would not, because it's a holiday in Israel. I suspect, though, that he also at the same time did not relish the idea of potentially coming face to face with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas. And I suspect that Arab leaders did not like the idea of seeing him here. They have been vitriolic in their criticism of him over recent months as the Gaza war has worn on. So that just underscores, Tom, the kinds of challenges, the kinds of divisions that will still be here tomorrow, the kinds of hurdles ahead if President Trump is to achieve his vision, his dream.
Keir Simmons for us from Egypt tonight. Keir, we thank you for all of your perspective and your reporting here on Top Story. We're going to have much more from Tel Aviv throughout the broadcast, but still ahead tonight, the major headlines back at home, neighborhoods under feet of water. As torrential rains blast the East Coast, millions still at risk at this hour as the powerful nor'easter causes travel chaos. Plus, are we on track for the longest government shutdown? The new warning tonight from House Speaker Mike Johnson. And the new surveillance video capturing the moment a Tesla crashed right into a restaurant? What happened here? Stay with us on this special edition of Top Story, live tonight from Israel. We're back now with a powerful nor'easter charging up the eastern seaboard. 18 million under flood alerts as the violent storm unleashes powerful winds and torrential rains. Right now, flight delays are mounting at major airports. NBC's Sam Brock is in the storm zone tonight.
The powerful nor'easter that's pounded the eastern seaboard, taking aim tonight at the Jersey Shore.
We wanted to see how much beach we had left.
Leaving Ocean City under feet of water. We're now approaching high tide, and barricades litter Ocean City, blocking drivers off from streets. And not for a few wet patches either. I'm a half a block away. This water goes as far as the eye can see. Officials today taking stock of the disintegrating beach, which caved before our very eyes. Look at that.
Yeah. Yep. Taking it with them.
Frank Donato is the emergency management coordinator. In 1 week, this entire dune has been eroded.
Correct. Yes. So it takes one storm. That's all.
In New York City, city officials say the nor'easter's howling winds ripped a solar panel off a carport, hitting and killing a 76-year-old woman. The system's devastating force also felt in the Carolinas, where mounds of sand line Hatteras Island on the Outer Banks, the bumps on the ground, cars buried underneath it. While thousands of miles away in Alaska, remnants of a typhoon stranding people in remote villages who had to be hoisted to safety by Coast Guard helicopters. At least 3 people are still unaccounted for. Doreen Carter's home was swept away with her family inside. They escaped by boat, but she says now there is no home and no town to return to.
The house is unlivable. We can't live in there anymore. This is the worst ever. It's totally, Kitnik is totally wiped out.
Sam, a violent and dangerous storm. It turned deadly for some there, as you reported. I know you're live in Ocean City, New Jersey. Talk to us about the conditions there. We're going to actually see the water. I don't know if it's receding or still moving in there behind you.
This is so wild, Tom. So the water is receding, but the amazing thing here, we're almost 6 hours removed now from those high tides, king tides actually, that elevate the water about a foot or two from a normal high tide. It was about 3 or 4 feet earlier today. It's come down significantly. But as you pointed out, if you look over my shoulder, you'll see the current of the water right near that stop sign. And then it just keeps going beyond that, a couple more blocks to where you can see stoplights. That's like a quarter mile from where I'm standing. That is one long waterway all through here. So pretty amazing there. As far as the sand dunes that we mentioned, it's going to be in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 million to restore those. Very important because it's, of course, the last line of defense between the ocean and many of these homes and businesses, but they are restored every several years. Now it's going to become even more immediate. Tom, back to you.
Yeah, they're definitely necessary. All right, Sam Brock for us. Sam, we thank you. Coming up on Top Story, all systems a go for SpaceX, the largest and most powerful rocket ever built, lifting off just moments ago. What it could mean for the future of spaceflight. Plus, the high-stakes meeting at the White House, President Trump set to sit down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The potential weapons that could be headed to the battlefield. Stay with us. We are back now from Tel Aviv as Israeli hostages are reunited with their families 2 long years after Hamas's deadly attack on October 7th. And while there is joy across Israel tonight, there is also pain. Many families whose loved ones were taken hostage and killed inside Gaza are still waiting for their remains to be returned. It's a pain that the parents of Hirsch Goldberg Poland know well. They've received their son's remains but are in touch with families who have not. I had the chance to sit down with them ahead of this historic day.
Have any of these other families that are getting remains returned or brought back to Israel, have they reached out? Are you providing comfort, guidance to them as well?
I woke up Thursday morning to messages from parents who are getting their children back alive and people who are getting their loved ones back not alive. And the second group were basically saying variations of, how do we do this? How do we walk forward? You know, when you've been in a struggle and a fight for something for so long, all you know is running. Yeah. And all of a sudden, what you're getting is something that's so painful and so filled with agony. And I said, I'm sending you love and strength. And we're here. We're here. And we do understand it. It's kind of actually presumptuous to say that we understand it, because I think everyone's suffering is very personal and specific. And so I can only speak from my experience. I think that there are many people who will see this conversation who have lost loved ones, lost children. Everyone suffers in a unique way, and yet that is the human condition. We all, at some point experience pain. And so we are open, and John and I have made it very known that we're here.
I want to actually zoom out and give the viewers a little bit of a sense of the complexity in Israel and in this region right now, which is, look, 405 days ago, we buried our son, and we pretty quickly thereafter jumped right back into the struggle to help bring home all the hostages, because we know the pain that these families are going through. This is a sense, assuming this all happens, this is a sense of accomplishment. It's the beginning of a sense of closure. But this is not victory. And the country right now and the region right now are kind of conflicted with how to feel. This is hopefully the enabler for us to start the very difficult, painful, national, and I would even say regional process of healing, recovery, trying to move forward. But I don't think there are any victories here. I think that the devastation around the region is so vast, and so many have lost their lives, so many families have been directly touched by this, that this isn't victory. We're celebrating the end of the war. We're celebrating reuniting people with their families, but we've got a long road ahead of us, all of us, to really be able to move forward.
You know, it's interesting. Obviously, you don't know how you're going to react in a situation like this if you're a parent, but I've sort of been amazed at how everyone has said there's 48 hostages left, whether they be living or dead. The numbers were sort of never separated up until now. I mean, people knew about them, but they always talked about the 48. What is that about? I don't know if it's the shared experience or if it's a thing with Israel, but explain that to me, Rachel.
I do think part of it is it's the shared experience. I think still within that hostage cohort, those 48, there's someone who's Nepalese, there's someone who is an Arab Muslim. There are people, we've said from the beginning, this is a global humanitarian crisis in the mini. And of this cohort, there have been Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and Buddhists representing 39 different countries. And now we're down to the final 48. There were originally 251. And we have tried very hard, I think, as a hostage community to be advocating for each other throughout. And we also, along the way, some of those were killed while in captivity. So we didn't put labels on people. Oh, this is someone who's deceased. This is someone who's alive. Everyone's life was hanging in the balance and still is, I will say. This is not done. It's not done. Until we have them, it's not over. And I think also a lot of this was guided by, in the Jewish tradition, the body is considered a holy vessel. And so it has to be treated with the utmost respect and intention. And so there was also sort of this guiding principle that we have to get all of these people back, these cherished, beloved, treasured people, whether they're alive or not. And so I think that was why we tried to really be sensitive, everyone, to these 48.
Yeah. Just adding to that, there have been numerous rallies in Israel lately in support of bringing home the hostages that have had 400,000 people. But for perspective for American viewers, that's a per capita equivalent in the United States of 14 million people showing up day after day for a rally, which is far bigger than the biggest rally ever to happen in the United States. There is a shared experience in Israel that has brought people together. Everybody feels like this could be our son, our brother, our daughter, our mother. And the country has just been banded together to bring these people home.
And we thank the Poland family for sharing their memories of their son and what the experience has been like since those October 7th terror attacks. Tonight, I want to bring in NBC's Matt Bradley. He's been reporting on the ground since the war broke out more than 2 years ago. He lives here in Tel Aviv for us. He's been speaking to leaders and civilians on both sides. But, Matt, I want to ask you, as somebody who is a resident here now, right? Your life is here. What has today and the past few days been like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been just incredible to watch. Obviously, hugely emotional, seeing everybody in this country just cheered by what's going on. But, in Hostages Square, where you were and I were today, you would get the feeling that this is an entirely unified country, that everyone is united around this notion of moving toward peace. We heard that from the Poland family just now. But that kind of papers over another reality, which is that this country is deeply wounded and very, very divided. And, that place where we were, Hostages Square, that was the scene of some really big protests against the government for 2 years. And one of the hostages family members I spoke to actually said that for 2 years, this was a place of agony. And now it's a place of joy. And that really is what's so surprising about this. Not just seeing the hostages being released, all of the dancing in the streets around that, but seeing people actually coming together, because this country is actually left deeply divided. And in the coming days and weeks, I fear, we're going to see more of that division.
Yeah, so in Israel today was a hopeful day. Obviously, the pain from October 7th still very much apparent. In Gaza, a much different scene, right? People returning to nothing. 67,000 have died there. There are 3 phases to this peace plan. We've talked about it throughout this broadcast. You're somebody who sees this day in, day out. What is the hardest part? And do you have any optimism that this could be a reality? There could be peace in this region?
Well, what I think doesn't really matter. The people that I've been speaking to here, the political people, the security people, they are all united in skepticism. It's a totally different thing than what we're seeing in the square. When we talk about this first phase and moving to phase 2 and phase 3, as you mentioned, that's all uncharted territory. We don't know where that's going, and there are so many ways in which that could go wrong. This was a day of joy, and I really don't want to act as though this is all going to, go terribly from here on out. But the fact is that none of these decisions have been made that would lead to the next several phases. Nobody knows where these different parties are going to stand. Nobody knows how powerful, truly, Hamas remains in the Gaza Strip. And then everybody I talked to on the Palestinian side and on the Israeli side, senior people, they all talk about how the West Bank is about to explode now. That's something we haven't been talking about all that much. And that is a real war zone right now, with tens of thousands of people being displaced. And that could ignite at any moment, and has in the past, often coordinated with what is going on in the Gaza Strip. So, I think that going forward, really, I'm a bit pessimistic, but only because I've been hearing that from senior people in Israel.
Matt Bradley, it is great to have you on the show. We appreciate all your perspective and your reporting. Now we want to turn to all the headlines we've been following back in the U.S. with Top Stories news feed. NBC News has learned that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to meet with President Trump at the White House this Friday. It comes as Trump says the U.S. is now considering approving long-range Tomahawk missiles for Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned the U.S. against sending those weapons, saying it would mark a new type of escalation. Wild video capturing the moment a Tesla crashed right into a restaurant in Miami. Take a look at this. You can see the car slamming into the outdoor patio, sending debris flying and knocking down a palm tree. Luckily, nobody was hurt here. Footage shows multiple people running away from the scene. Police say they detained 2 of them, who were later released without charges. Investigators are still searching for the driver. And just minutes ago, SpaceX launched its massive Starship mega rocket. Here you can see it blasting off from the company's Starbase headquarters in South Texas. It is the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built, and this marks its 11th test flight. SpaceX hopes the rocket will help pave the way for future missions to Mars. And with the government shutdown entering its 3rd week, many federal workers remain in limbo, the White House defending its decision to lay off thousands. But some employees who received notices over the weekend now being told they still have jobs. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez reports.
Tonight, on day 13 of the shutdown, Republicans are blaming Democrats for causing the White House to lay off more than 4,000 workers across 7 federal agencies.
We're barreling toward one of the longest shutdowns in American history unless Democrats drop their partisan demands.
Democrats are blocking the funding bill because they want the GOP to extend hundreds of billions of dollars in health care spending.
There's definitively no reason to ever trust the Republicans, particularly as it relates to the health care issue.
But Republicans argue that's too expensive. So
we're ending some programs that we don't want. They happen to be Democrat-sponsored programs.
The Trump administration now reversing course on some of the layoffs after telling hundreds of scientists at the CDC they'd been let go. An official familiar with the matter telling NBC News it was due to a, quote, glitch in the system.
The government shutdown inevitably leads to some chaos.
That chaos doesn't sit well with Nico, an Iraq war veteran and furloughed government worker who asked us not to use his last name. How concerned are you that you will be laid off?
100. So I'm waiting for the call.
He's now considering a second job to pay his new mortgage while he waits for Congress.
It's like it feels like a bunch of losers, right? Like this isn't a left-right thing. This isn't a conservative, liberal thing. It's like, guys, you have one job.
The Senate is scheduled to return to Washington tomorrow, but there is still no clear path to end the shutdown stalemate. Tom?
Gabe Gutierrez at the White House for us. Gabe, we thank you. We're also following multiple air disasters in the U.S. A helicopter spinning out of control in Southern California and a plane actually crashing onto a busy highway in Massachusetts this morning. NBC's Morgan Chesky wraps it up all for us tonight.
Tonight, federal investigators poring over deadly scenes following 2 plane crashes ending in a fiery nightmare.
Dude, it's a plane, dude.
In Massachusetts, flames covering the highway.
We have a confirmed plane crash with possible injuries, active fire, and jet fuel spilled.
Morning commuters swerving after a small aircraft slammed into the median, killing 2, according to state police.
All of a sudden, everybody locked up the brakes, and we all kind of zigzagged.
In Texas, investigators say 2 people died Sunday when a plane struck tractor trailers in a fireball. According to authorities, the Beechcraft King Air C-90 had taken off from a nearby airport in Fort Worth. While in Southern California, a helicopter sent debris flying Saturday, spinning, then slicing through palm trees before crashing in a beachside parking lot. Officials say 2 people on board and 3 bystanders were injured but survived, adding the chopper was supposed to be part of a Cars and Copters event. Several witnesses rushing to pull at least 1 victim to safety. 3 frightening accidents in 3 days that tonight remain under investigation.
And tonight we know the wreckage from that helicopter remains in that Huntington Beach parking lot as the NTSB continues to investigate. Tom, there have been a lot of questions as to how much the ongoing government shutdown would be impacting the investigators' work here. We're told that because they are deemed essential employees, they will continue working and trying to find out what caused that chopper to go down, but of course will not be getting paid, at least for the near future here. Tom?
Still ahead on Top Story, the deadly flood disaster in Mexico, the death toll climbing, with dozens still missing days after catastrophic floods wiped away entire neighborhoods, the urgent search and rescue efforts at this hour, plus the growing crisis in Madagascar, the president fleeing the country, saying the military has turned against him. We'll explain what's driving the chaos. We are back now with Top Story's Global Watch, starting with the president of Madagascar fleeing the country following weeks of demonstrations led by Gen Z protesters. An opposition lawmaker says President Andry Rajoelina left the African nation after members of the military turned against the government. It's unclear exactly where he is right now, but reports say he left on a French military plane. And a deadly bus crash in South Africa, killing more than 40 people and leaving nearly 50 others hurt. This is the bus line upside down after the wreck, with rescuers searching underneath for victims. Authorities say it veered off the road before rolling down a hill on a steep mountain pass. No word yet what caused this crash. And a massive fire ripping through a neighborhood in the capital of Peru. Here you can see the flames and giant cloud of smoke that erupted over the weekend. Local media reporting around 100 homes were destroyed. Officials suspect that the fire was caused by an illegal pyrotechnics warehouse. Video shows fireworks going off as emergency crews responded. Nobody was reported hurt. In Mexico, torrential rains triggering a deadly flood catastrophe. Residents describing a wall of water that swept away cars and houses and buckled roads. The death toll rising tonight, with many more still missing. NBC's Camila Bernal has this one.
Tonight, the desperate search for 65 people still missing after catastrophic floods swept through Mexico. 64 people confirmed killed as days of torrential rain pounded the central and eastern parts of the country, pushing rivers past their limits, a wall of water washing away homes and swallowing up cars.
No tenemos nada.
Epifania Hernandez in the state of Veracruz says people are trapped, adding she, her family, and others have been left with nothing. Local authorities there say the Cazones River rose nearly 5 feet in just a matter of minutes, leaving no time for residents to escape. This business owner saying no one was prepared for this, pointing to the tables, chairs, and everything else he's lost. The National Guard and local rescue teams have been searching for survivors through waist-deep water for days. 900 rescues carried out on Friday alone, according to Mexico's Navy.
Lamentablemente se nos taparon las casas.
Maria Elena Santos says she was able to get out, adding that her family members barely made it. Images from above show the destruction. What was once lush and green, now underwater. Electricity cut off, roads blocked by debris, and streets covered in mud. A total of 8,700 military personnel on the ground to assist in the recovery effort. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum touring the devastation Sunday, vowing to help with cleanup, food, and drinking water.
And the Mexican president announced today 3,000 public servants will start going door to door in the affected areas to conduct a welfare census. At the same time, the military is providing a mobile kitchen, water treatment plants, and manpower and supplies for road repairs. Tom?
Thoughts on this historic day here in Israel. The moments from today, the world. Stay with us. Finally tonight, as those reunions play out across Israel, we want to focus on family. Those returning home under the peace deal, not just hostages, but fathers, sons, and brothers. Here are their stories.
The family of Guy Gilboa Dalal celebrating his 24th birthday without him this May. It was the last milestone they'd spend without their son. Party producer Elkanah Bobot was taken from the Nova Music Festival. His larger-than-life events even inspired a character on a hit Israeli TV show. His friends and family now celebrating his release with a party of their own. Brothers Yair and Eitan Horn taken together on October 7th. Yair released months ago, but he kept fighting to bring his brother home too. Also taken, brothers Ariel and David Cuneo. David's wife, Sharon, a hostage as well, returned after 52 days in captivity. You see her here, now running into David's arms. Bar Cooperstein, an usher at Nova, his father
uses a wheelchair and couldn't speak due to an accident.
After his son Bar was taken, he learned to speak so he could fight for his release. And today, he stood up.
Incredible moments playing out here in Israel. We thank you so much for watching this special edition of Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas reporting from Tel Aviv tonight. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.